Dasha Burns is in Pennsylvania, where she has now interviewed both Senate candidates this week. Brewster's on the ground in Wisconsin. And in Georgia, where there's a Senate debate tonight, is our friend, Atlanta Journal constitutional political reporter and NBC News contributor Greg Bluestein. And in Nevada, where once again it's a key battleground. It's a state that they claim they matter. It's never in the top of the national headlines. It should be. And the expert on all things Nevada politics, the Nevada Independent CEO John Ralston, is also joining us. But Dasha, let me start with you and the interview with Oz. We saw the exchange on health. The other big issue for Oz has been abortion, where it is, frankly, it seems as if he's been on all sides of the issue if you look at him in totality as a TV show and as a candidate.
Yeah, Chuck, that's absolutely right, and that's something we did press Oz on during our interview. I gave him the example of 2019 in an interview where he talked about that the government shouldn't get involved in other people's stuff, as he put it, that life is hard enough as it is. And then a recent example of him calling abortion murder. I asked how he squares those two, and he said that, you know, he's always been pro-life. He kind of gave his talking points again about the exceptions he believes in, which is rape, incest, and life of the mother. It's interesting, both of these candidates, right, are pressing the other on their own talking points. Fetterman, in our interview, said Oz has missed two words, which is a yes or a no on the national abortion ban proposed by Lindsey Graham. And Oz has been blasting Fetterman on the issue of crime. And it's interesting to see with voters which of those things are going to win out. But you do want some direct answers from politicians on those things. I want you to hear our exchange from Oz on the abortion issue. Talk to voters, and they are very tired of politicians giving politician answers to questions like that are yes or no questions, right? You're going to be, if you win, you're going to be a colleague of his. You're going to have to vote on bills like this. So can you tell us right now, yes or no on that bill?
I'm giving you a bigger answer than yes or no. I'm telling you I don't want any federal rules limiting what states do with abortion. It should be up to the states.
And as you look at how these candidates campaign, too, there's quite a big difference. Fetterman has been holding these big rallies with thousands of people. Oz, though, has spent a lot of his time making campaign stops in and around Philly in neighborhoods that have high crime rates, really trying to hammer home the point about drugs, about crime, about policing. So watching that dichotomy play out has been fascinating, too, Chuck.
No doubt. He wants to overperform in the Philly suburbs. Overall, it did seem like he was trying to present himself as more moderate than a Trump-endorsed candidate might seem to people. He had something to say about marijuana.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprising moment. It's very rare these days in this climate that you hear a Republican candidate agree with something that the current Democratic president has done. But he did. He said that Biden made a rational move when he announced his pardon of those convicted of simple possession of marijuana. You don't hear that very often. We also asked him about mandatory minimums, if he wants to bring those back, and he said that the federal government shouldn't be involved in that, to leave that to the judges. So, yeah, it seems to be an attack to the middle at this point in the game, Chuck. All
right, Dasha Burns in Pennsylvania for us. What a week, Dasha. Way to be on top of this race. Excellent reporting all week long. Real reporters back you up on that. Let me move over to Shaq, Brewster. So, Shaq, that debate last night, I guess the question is this. Ron Johnson's aggressiveness surprised me a little bit, if you believe the polls. Mandela Barnes's aggressiveness did not surprise me, if you believe the polls. So walk me through that debate last night.
Well, if you want to talk about the polls, what both campaigns are acknowledging is that none of them really believe that it's that 6-point margin that you saw in the Marquette University poll. They acknowledged, and you even saw this in a campaign fundraiser email that came out a couple of minutes ago, you saw the Barnes campaign acknowledge that the advertisements coming from Republican groups throughout the month of September, that took a toll on their campaign. So they believe that Johnson is ahead, but they don't believe it's that margin. They say it's still Wisconsin. This is going to be tight at the end of the day. But what you saw in that montage there is that you saw Barnes trying to take the attacks that he's been receiving and much of the messaging that's been the focus of those advertisements in terms of the issue of crime, and tried to flip that and spin that onto Senator Johnson, saying, you're not serious. issue of crime, you're not going to handle it. You saw him try to get on the offensive with that issue. Is that going to be a pivot that we're seeing in these last couple of weeks ahead of the election? That remains to be seen. You also saw him bring up a lot abortion, the topic of abortion. He brought that up almost any time he had the opportunity to, Chuck.
Look, I spent a bunch of time out in Wisconsin. I've got a special, one of our special episodes of Meet the Press Reports that's already been airing on News Now. It's available on Peacock. And one of the things that you take away from Wisconsin is that there aren't swing voters that vacillate between the parties. It's swing voters that swing between voting and non-voting. And you've been talking to a bunch of non-voters. Tell me about it.
That's exactly right. The largest block of swing voters, not just here in Wisconsin, but really across the country, are those who decide whether or not they vote, whether they vote in presidential years and then come back and stay home in those midterm election years. And we see that here in Wisconsin. And when every race is razor thin, it has a larger impact in a state like this. I want you to listen to some of the conversations I've been having with people I've met along the way who just say, at this point, they don't plan to vote in November, or at least they're undecided on that question. Listen here. Do you plan on voting in November?
Not necessarily. Not
Why not?
necessarily. Just because I really don't see any. I don't see the direct effect that it has on the community that I live in. Well, it's definitely easy to vote. You know, it's just when you check that box, man. It's just you really walk away feeling like nothing is going to change.
That sentiment is one that you hear from voters, that canvassers, people are knocking on doors, also hear from voters, and that's a concern for the Barnes campaign.
I have to tell you, Shaq, I was in Milwaukee specifically talking with some key African-American Democratic leaders who were concerned the Barnes campaign was falling behind on some get-out-the-vote efforts in Milwaukee. It's just interesting that how much this is dovetailing together. Shaquille Brewster on the ground for us in Wisconsin. Shaq, thank you. Let's move over to Greg Bluestein. Let's get the preview for this debate tonight. And I just confirmed, Greg, this will be the first time Herschel Walker has ever participated in any debate, in any race, on any level. What are we looking for tonight? What are you looking for tonight?
Well, you're exactly right. He skipped every Republican primary debate. He was in such command of the race from the get-go with Donald Trump's endorsement and Mitch McConnell's endorsement. He didn't need to do so. But right now, one of his biggest problems is wavering Republicans. Those swing voters you talked about, those maybe independents, mainstream Republicans who just can't vote for him. He's been targeting them by going even further to the right on issues like transgender policies, on attacking Joe Biden every chance he gets. Now this race, in a sense, is being looked at as a referendum on Joe Biden. They're saying vote for Herschel Walker to vote against Joe Biden, even if, you know, they're telling Republicans who are concerned about his history of baggage that goes long before these abortion reports that just came out last week. They're saying that to those wavering Republicans, a vote for Herschel Walker is a vote against Joe Biden.
What do we expect Warnock to do tonight? I mean, do we expect him to try to talk about the character issues, or do we expect him to just zero in on something like abortion rights?
Yeah, I think he'll focus on abortion. I think he will focus on character issues, but the character issues he'll focus on is something that his campaign has been airing for really weeks now, which is the allegations from Herschel Walker's ex-wife that he tried to choke and point a gun at her head, right? These very raw emotional footage from an interview about 13 years ago that had been all over the Atlanta airwaves. I don't think he'll lean into the Daily Beast's report, the abortion issues, but I think he'll rely on reporters on the panel to do so for him.
Greg, is this race now, it's a given that Walker can't get to 50. Is it all about just keeping Warnock under 50 and buying more time?
I really think that's where we're at. And I think strategists from both campaigns are expecting, or at least preparing for, a runoff would be in early December. But right now, there's really no great path to victory for Herschel Walker. But there is still a path to victory, an outright victory for Raphael Warnock. And of course, in a runoff, everything's reset.
Oh, of course, because you have no idea how the rest of the nation went. That will have an impact on what the dynamics are in a runoff. Greg Bluestein in Georgia for us. Enjoy Savannah tonight. That's going to be fascinating. I think we're all going to be watching that. That's a real Friday Night Light. Now let's go to John Ralston. And John, this is no BS. This is not me blowing smoke with you when it comes to the importance of Nevada. I think it's the single closest race in the country. It's the Senate, probably the Senate race that more people should be focusing on that they don't? I know there's not a celebrity TV doctor and a football player and all that nonsense. How much on a knife's edge is this Senate race to you? And is the Harry Reid machine, can they pull another rabbit out of their hat?
Yeah, that's the right question, Chuck. Can they pull the rabbit out of the hat? Listen, this race is very, very close. The last half dozen polls or so, most of them have shown Adam Laxalt, the Republican challenger, ahead of the incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto, but within the margin of error. And the race has been close for a long time. And the Reid machine, as you mentioned, which is the machine that the late Harry Reid built, is always has in almost every case, as you know, Chuck, been able to win these close races by registering enough voters and then getting them out in early voting, which starts a week from tomorrow, and they bank enough votes in early voting that it doesn't matter really that much what happens on Election Day. The big difference this year in the Senate race is that every single voter in this state is going to get a mail ballot. Just yesterday in Clark County, the Democratic stronghold, 1.2 million mail ballots were sent out. If Clark County turnout is high, if the Democrats can bank those votes, then she has a chance to hang on. If not, it's going to be a very long night for her.
You know, in past midterm cycles, it feels as if the governor's race and the Senate race were totally separated. I don't get that sense this time. Is it? And where's their overlap? And you know, what is the likelihood you'd have a split party result in those two races?
You know, it's a great question, Chuck. They are similar in the sense that Joe Biden's name comes up a lot in both of the races, and not on the Democratic side. Much easier to tie Catherine Cortez Masto to Biden, you would think, than the governor, Steve Sisolak. But Joe Lombardo, the sheriff of Clark County, who's running for governor, has been doing that. In fact, they've even set up signs that appear to be Steve Sisolak signs embracing Joe Biden. So they think that Biden's numbers here, which are in the high 30s or low 40s, as they are in many places, are going to drag Sisolak down. Now, Chuck, you asked the right question. Could there be a split result? I think there is a sense that Sisolak is in more trouble than Catherine Cortez Masto by smart Republicans here. But I have to tell you, Chuck, you know how I like to predict election outcomes here in Nevada. This is a very, very difficult one to predict, I guess. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised at 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2. One quick thing, Chuck, the real big change in analyzing elections in Nevada is the explosion of non-major party voters, which are now a plurality in the state, and 2/3 or more were just automatically registered at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Chuck, which side is going to be able to find those voters, know which ones are theirs, and turn them out?
Well, you look at it, and my assumption would be, well, the Democrats have been planning for this for so long. They've always had a strategy, and the Republicans are divided on whether they should even target mail-in voters. So you can't help but wonder if that puts the Republicans a bit on their heels. Let me ask this question specifically on the governor's race and as it plays to does Lombardo overperform in Clark?
Yeah, I think that's a key question. He is from Clark County. He's the sheriff here. And so, you know, there are polls, Chuck, that show him doing pretty well against Steve Sisolak in Clark County. The conventional wisdom here in this state is that Democrats need to win Clark County by close to 10 points to have a chance to hold off the landslide loss in rural Nevada and probably a split in Reno or Washoe County. If Joe Lombardo can come close to Steve Sisolak in Clark County, this race is over.
Hey, very quickly, John, with the new way, and this is something I'm asking you a question I'd be asking you off air too. The amount of mail-in ballots that are now being mailed out, is the count in Nevada going to get slowed down? Are we looking at election week to get our final result in Nevada? You know, a one-point race, is that something we're going to be able to call on election night, or unlikely now?
I think it's unlikely, and I'm having painful flashbacks to when I was on the air with you during the last election, asking me when Nevada is going to finish the count. I'm afraid we may have the same problem again. Again, it seems late to most people, but Chuck, it's still a little bit too early. Once voting starts next week, I think I'll have a better handle on just what's going to happen in both of these top races.
No, it's so true. About a week of early voting, and you start to sort of think you have the contours of of what turnout is going to come to fruition. John Ralston,
Right.
the man when it comes to Nevada politics, Nevada Independent. If you don't subscribe, you should.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.